to Roger Saydack. You probably either know him or know of him. He is a curator, a writer, and also a lecturer on Pacific Northwest art. He's also a retired attorney and also retired from teaching at the law school at the U of O. He is here tonight to talk about his friend's work, Mark Clarke. Thank you, Roger.
Oh, thank you. Everyone here. If I'm not speaking loud enough, just please give me a signal like that and I'll amp it up. This is kind of a difficult acoustic, but I'll keep speaking at this level and we'll see how it goes. It's just such a pleasure to talk about Mark. I knew him for many, many years, more than 35 years. Met him shortly after we arrived in Eugene, almost 50 years ago, but really got to know him about 35 years ago when we began having coffees and going up to Corvallis to visit Nelson Sandgren and look through his art and have lunch with him and talk all afternoon. We went to baseball games, we went to a couple of football games. We just became good friends, and I miss him very much, but I learned an awful lot from him. And one of the great things about Mark, and you know this, I know just by looking around this room, he was born to be a painter. Doesn't mean he didn't work at it. He worked assiduously at it all his life. He painted regularly, all the time, prodigiously. But it was a driving force in him, and that's what made him a painter. He couldn't not paint. And that's, Elaine and I, my wife, met in college when we were both studying painting. We left, and both of us tried our hand at painting and earning a living on other ways for a few years, and realized we couldn't make the two work. So painting's always been a part of my life, our life. We've always been very interested in it. The most important thing, though, I think I have to tell you about that, is when I look at paintings, when I approach them, when I try to understand them, I try to have the perspective of a painter. Not a collector, even though I have a collection. Not an art historian, although I write about art history. Not an academic, but as a painter. I try to look at the sensual qualities of the painting and imagine what it would be like to actually have stood by Mark and talked with him about this and what it's like looking at it now. Now, I thought what I'd do is pick out a few paintings, talk about them, and if questions come up, please ask. I'm happy to talk, and we have some world-class experts in this room, not the least of which is Margaret Coe, Mark's wife and fellow painter, who knows far more than I will ever. So, the first one I'd like to start with is this one right here. This is a fantastic painting. I hope you all noticed it as you came in. I'm looking at this for a couple of reasons. It's called River Rock No. 6. It's from 1994.
Wow.
It's an extraordinarily strong painting. I mean, just look at that massive composition. You see these tremendous boulders until you get up really close. And then you notice that these boulders are not walls of paint. They're not carved out of paint. They're made with individual brush strokes. It's really quite interesting how he did that. That gives the painting both a monumentality and an intimacy when you get up close. John Crusoe, who you all know, who was with us today and one of Mark's great friends, and another fellow painter, made the excellent comment that there's a lot of David McCosh in this painting, and there certainly is. You can see that in so many places. The tree hanging down over the rocks, the action of the water over the gravel is obviously in the river. This is classic McCosh. Obviously, this is a man who studied, this is a painter who studied with David McCosh. He learned from David McCosh, but he used it in his own ways. Another great thing about this painting is it's easy to take it for granted. Mm-hmm. First time I looked at it, I said, wow, wow, wow. And then I walked away and then I said, wait a minute, how did he do that? I mean, this is exceptional. It's beautifully composed, remarkably well fitted together. The colors couldn't be better coordinated, and it has that authentic feel of the Pacific Northwest. All of us who live here know this place. We may never have been to this exact place, but we feel it. And that's one of the great qualities in Mark's painting, is it looks so familiar to us who live here.
Absolutely.
He really has captured the essence of this place in so many different ways. So this is a true great, and actually the frame I love. What a wonderful compliment to this painting, that rugged Northwest quality. It's just a tremendous work. Now let's take a look at this one back here. A classic Mark Clarke landscape. This is not what I think of when I think of Mark here. This is
Yeah.
what I think of.
Sure.
This is just, you know, he's referred to as a Northwest master quite regularly, and this is why. This and other paintings like it. This is a remarkable painting. He had there's an enormous sense of place in this painting. And one of the things that I've always admired about Mark, you know, it's one thing to make a portrait emotional. It's another thing to make a landscape painting emotional. And he had the ability to do that. He was a painter who saw through his eyes, not with his eyes. He didn't just look at the surface quality, he looked deeply into everything that was there and really understood it in a big way. And that's the result we see today. His colors are extraordinary. This is amazing, beautiful work.
Yeah.
I like to think that with Mark, he uses colors to say the things that are too important for words. You know.
And also, maybe you can comment on this,
Sure.
what I was just telling my friend, what's extraordinary to me, and I've noticed for years with his painting, is they're very poetic, and you're getting at exactly why.
Oh, yeah.
But how with acrylic can you make this texture so vibrant like this?
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
the
extraordinary. I don't know how the hell he did that.
He uses acrylic like oil, and I mean, what he does with it is marvelous, and it would take John and Peg to describe how that's done. I mean, how he mastered that. You want to say a few words about it?
Well,
Peg?
just that I think people, these certain surfaces that he's associated with, people like so well on those landscapes,
Yeah.
is that he evolved a way of working with acrylics specifically to get a more depth to the paint, you know, rather than it just being kind of surface.
Right.
And one of the things that he developed and did all the time, because acrylic dries fast, so
Right,
this,
right.
you could do what he did with acrylic. It's a reason what it was is that he would maybe there was a shape, a big shape, perhaps a tree or something, and then he might scumble over it. If you don't know the word scumble, it's kind of dry, fairly a paint that's not been thinned down, pretty, and then dipped in a dry brush, so that you could just kind of hit at the surface of it without making like a standard brush stroke. It's just, does this make any sense? It's kind of like shifting the paint lightly, like it's not like it's coming in direct contact with the canvas. It's kind of like,
Russian? Like
well, yeah, kind of like it's called scumbling, but it's just a light touch, and then so he put something opaque down with the scumbling, and then he lets that dry, and then he would mix acrylic medium with a hue that's not been mixed with white, something that's, you know, what color he wants, and then he glazed over that. Well, he didn't do that once or twice. He actually did that enough so that you get those surfaces look like they have some depth to them. Anyway, that's a major thing. I'm not saying that was his only trick,
Yeah.
but I think that was a very interesting one that has a quality people like a lot.
That's just a wonderful explanation. Thank you for that. You know, when you look at a painting like this, one of the things that is really clear is it's a whole thing. It's come together, you know, and he had this ability to generalize the forms that are in here, this tree, the land, the brush, everything else, and paint it in a way that caused it all to merge. So when you look at it, you see one thing, not many, but you have a sense of everything that's going on in here as well. It's a remarkable painting. The other thing that this painting does, which I see in some of his extraordinary landscapes, is it has an emotional quality that is very specific to that place. It's very precise. It's not generalized emotion. It's what that place made him feel. And you can feel it when you look at this and see it in that light. Mark just didn't make the same landscape painting time and time again. Every time he discovered a place like this and decided he was going to paint it, he really discovered it through his painting. That's how he came to truly understand it. And that's why it's such a successful painting for us to see today. This is a real beauty, yes?
Is this based on a specific place?
I'm sure it is. What specific place, I don't know. The idea came from a specific place. And it could be one of many. I'm gonna, if I may, I'm gonna move a painting now out so we can all see it without having, I want to look at that one in the corner
Yes.
right here. This is kind of a small one, so, no, I got it. Now this is a really wonderful figurative painting. It's very different than the last two we looked at, because people are in it. Well, what's such a big deal about people? As soon as we see this, we wonder, who are they? What are they doing? Are they talking? What are they talking about? Do they have a relationship? What is it? And they're not just standing in this environment, this landscape. They're a part of this landscape. They're integrated into it. And you know, the way he shaped them, these general brushstrokes, these sort of figures that are very plain and simple, when you look closely at them, they're very poetic. They're shaped in beautiful ways. These people are reacting to one another with their bodies. You can almost hear what they're saying. Make it up if you can't hear it, but sometimes that's good to do. I think a painting like this must have, I don't know when he added those figures, but I'm glad he did. I'm glad he doesn't have figures in all of his paintings, but when I see them, particularly embedded in a rich landscape like this, I think it enriches the whole experience of the painting. So that's another example of how varied and diverse. And look at the shine of that painting, the surface of it. I don't know if you can really see it, but you get a sense of what Peg was talking about and how those layers of tinting and varnish come over the top and really give that a rich, rich surface. Is it okay if I lean it against here for a moment? Okay. So let's see, let's look at one or two others. Right here on this wall here. Excuse me. So we're looking at a painting of two people, indistinct, can't really identify them, but we actually know quite a bit about them by the way Mark presented them. Here's an individual who is full of character. Is this an actual person? Maybe, maybe not. Peg, do you happen to know if this is one of Mark's friends?
I don't know, but I believe that's something out of his head. It reminds me of the kind of thing that he off the top of his head. Though he may have been thinking about, he had a really good visual memory. And I know some of his early landscapes, he'd be driving, all night life or something. He could memorize some of the shapes of the hills and things. So
Isn't
I
that
think
great?
he's
Isn't that
well
wonderful?
done that with faces too. He did have a good visual memory.
Yeah, when we'd go up to visit Nelson, we would always take Highway 99 up. He just loved the rolling hills out there and the way everything looked.
That may have been his favorite road.
Yeah, he loved it. He commented on it all the time. He felt so grateful for this environment that he was born into and that he never left. Tremendous character in this painting. This person developed a personality, became who he is. I think it says boy here, and I'll bet that's correct. Who he is as a result of the work that Mark did. And then this black background, this dark background, I should say. It's not really black. It really makes that person stand out, creates the contrast that makes this such a riveting image. We'll look at one other, and then I'm happy to walk around and talk about any that you'd like to talk about, but it's this one here. I'll move this one out so everybody can see it a little bit better. Talk about, an easy painting to overlook. He did these all the time. I own 2 of them. They're remarkably skillful. I mean, look at this, the way he organized this field. Everything is divided up beautifully, perfectly. The textures he created, these aren't just flat areas of paint. He's really developed them in a variety of different ways, and he's made a very successful small piece. I mean, this is a terrific piece of its own. He was a wonderful abstract painter, which is a real indication of someone who is a very fine painter, because these are the basics, these are the fundamentals. These are at work in the things that we can relate to because they have images in them we can recognize, but this shows the real skill set that Mark had. Peggy, you want to add anything, or John, do you want to add anything?
I think the only thing I'd say is that Mark had what he called a vocabulary of shapes, and he was an extraordinarily good sculptor. You know, he couldn't afford to make these huge sculptures, but he had the ability, but his shapes went together really well. I always relate this, as well as collages, to his sculpture, because though they're two-dimensional, you feel the energy of the shapes and what they're doing. Yeah.
It's wonderful to see you standing next to Mark right there in that portrait.
Looks like he's
He's
being a little critical of my comment.
Right? Well, he's got a wry sense of humor, and he's looking at me. He used to tell me sometimes when we'd have coffee and I'd start getting rhapsodic about his painting, he would say, you got to stop that black coffee. Try some cream in it. You got to calm down a little. That's a great example of Mark's sense of humor. Mm-hmm. It's also a wonderful thing about portraits, particularly self-portraits of artists, particularly self-portraits that look directly at you. Why did he do that? Why is he looking at us? I think because he wants us to know he's there. I think he's looking at us because that's a way of saying, I don't know how far away you are in terms of distance. I don't know how many years have passed between us. Could be 100, 200 years. But I want you to understand that I made this for you. And that's why I'm looking at you. Anyway. Yes, ma'am.
Would you turn that painting around?
Sure.
Painting on the back too.
Yeah. It's always wonderful to see what's on the back of a painting, because this is a beginning, but it's actually a pretty interesting beginning. You wonder where he might have taken this. Thank you for calling that out. Thank you for calling that out. Okay, any questions or comments? Anything else you'd like to look at? Please this is a great opportunity. I don't know, how many of these paintings have been shown before, do you think, Peg?
Mark had left quite a lot of work, and so Karin just selects when she's going to have a show, she just goes through all the storage and selects things, and usually she doesn't show the same one twice, but it's not, she wouldn't on certain occasions.
So it's a real privilege to see this work now, all these years after Mark made it, and here it is. It's coming out for the first time. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that's really wonderful.
And
So
like
this is
can you say anything about this one that just hit me like
this
a
one.
blast when I came in here? I mean, it's
Watercolor.
literally unbelievable.
I mean, there
It's
aren't
just
many
extraordinary.
watercolors by Mark that are out there anymore.
Huh?
Not that I've seen.
No,
They're
they're
not
so
many.
cute. This is incredible.
Yeah, well, one of the
Everything
things
about it, the frame, I mean, it's just.
One of the things that watercolor allows you to do is watercolor is a moment in time. You don't have the opportunity to work it as heavily as that portrait we were looking at
Yeah.
is worked. So he made this, and this is a pretty spontaneous reaction to what he was doing at that time. And you can see how carefully it's done. I mean, there's a lot going on in it, but there's also a real incredible gaze that this person has.
It's
You know, it's really
extraordinary.
very, he's looking at us in a very interested way. Took a lot of skill to make this painting.
Absolutely.
A lot of skill, because you don't get second chances with watercolor very often. Thanks for calling that out. That's really a good one.
That really is. And that frame, oh my
Oh,
God.
it's terrific. Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.